It's time for the Russ Belville Show's Cannabis QandA with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Dr. Earlywine is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and a leading author and researcher on cannabinoids and health, who pins the Ask Dr. Mitch column for High Times magazine. Get your questions ready in our live chat or call in to 971-533-7111 now.
Welcome back, everybody, and as you know, every Wednesday we speak with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. How you doing, Dr. Mitch? Hello, Dr. Mitch, do we have you? Well, this is interesting. It says he's there. It says it's turned on, not muted. All right, we will have to go to a quick song here so I can see what's going on. It looked like he was there, but it doesn't look like he is now, so hold on just a moment. Be right back.
Ever seen in your life, and I tell you something else, we're gonna smoke it all tonight, cause I never take it home, that's the heat zone, won't get ratted out if I only smoke alone, but I'm a much friendlier smoker, I'm not a solo toker, and I'm quick to share a chalice with a joker playing poker. So belly up and ante up, and ladies try to keep your panties up as you're choking on the smoke and find you can't keep up. But don't stop now, just take a break and catch your breath, cause we can smoke this shit till there ain't none left.
All right, hold on just a moment.
Follow me, follow me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you now. We finally got you. Thanks,
Okay.
Dr. Mitch. The first call, it was just silent for some reason. I couldn't figure it out.
It's the last day of school.
Oh, is that what it is? You got that summer fever, I see. All right.
You know it.
Well, Dr. Mitch is here to answer our questions on cannabis science, culture, history, and health. So if you have a question, get it up there in our chat room, and we'll be sure to ask it. But we always start off by giving Dr. Mitch a chance to fill us in on the latest science headlines on cannabis. So what's going on?
Oh, I appreciate you sending me these links, actually, Russ. One on a cannabinoid-related drug and HIV, and one on cigarettes as the gateway to marijuana.
Yeah, let's start with the cigarettes one. I think that one's a funny one.
Well, it's funny because we've actually had some data that are consistent with this before, but basically in big interviews with college students at two different campuses, those who were more tobacco involved before freshman year ended up consistently more tobacco involved at the end, and also more likely to use cannabis. And what was kind of funny was those who were more cannabis involved also smoked more cigarettes. Again, this is completely correlational and kind of strange. I do feel like there's an underlying personality issue here, and no need for me to get on my usual rant against cigarettes. I do hope everybody's vaporizing and keeping away from those nasty cancer sticks.
Yeah, and that last part, said that college students who used both tobacco and cannabis smoked more cigarettes per month than the people who were just tobacco smokers. The suggestion that smoking pot makes you want to smoke more tobacco. And that sounded awful to me because we've talked about how, smoking tobacco or smoking cannabis makes the tobacco effects worse. Isn't that right?
We have seen that interaction in both Tashkin's data and some other data sets. So I really am down on the cigarettes, especially for those of us who are fans of the plant.
Mm-hmm. All right. We have a question from Bago Schwago in our chat room. He's heard you say that THC is burned at a low temperature. So does really hitting a pipe more than once or twice worth it? As far as, have you really just burned off most of the THC in the first couple of bowls?
Odds are high that if it's not the issue of lighting it so much as just using it once. So if you've got resin left over that you think you're going to get a lot of THC out of, that's not really going to happen. I know a lot of people can't stand the thought of that, and every time I mention it, I get a lot of angry emails. But the leftover resin on the pipe really doesn't have a lot of THC. And you don't have to vaporize your pot until it's all the way black. In truth, if you run it through the vaporizer and it's a greenish brown after one time, odds are high you really got all the THC out of it.
Another thing with respect to temperatures that I've heard, people have those adjustable, especially the digital ones, those digital vaporizers. I've heard some people say that if you adjust the temperature higher, that you'll get more CBD in the vapor and less THC, as if there's a different vaporization point for the different cannabinoids. Is there any truth to that?
They do have different vaporization points, but they're relatively close, and not a ton of data on this, as you might imagine. So I wouldn't worry about that. In truth, if you're seeing any kind of smoke come out into the tube on the sort of Vapor Brothers style, or even in your inhalation, odds are high you've got it too high, and there should just be a fine blue mist on your exhale. You really don't need to crank it up very high to get these effects. And the CBD will definitely be in there.
So you're saying exhale of a vaporizer, if it's too thick, too smoke-like, then you've probably got it set too high?
Exactly.
Okay. We want kind of a light, thin, bluish vapor. All right. That sounds great. Let's get to another. Oh, before we get to the other questions, the other new study, this was Reason.com pointed this out, and it was a study out of, I can't remember where it came from, but they had found that a synthetic derivative of THC was effective in fighting HIV virus in macrophages. And of course, Kevin Sabet jumped right on it to say, well, this isn't real THC, it's a derivative. So what's the story on this one?
Well, wow, I'm going to say something Kevin Sabet said, which is this isn't real THC, it's a derivative. But the bottom line is I just don't want people to think, oh, I smoke pot, therefore I can have sex with anyone all I want without paying attention to condom use and things like that. Nevertheless, what we've got are two different CB2 agonists, so we're talking not their standard CB1 sort of intoxicating brain cannabinoid receptor, but the CB2, the more peripheral one that's involved in the immune system and things like that. And when that is stimulated by these chemicals, what a surprise, we do see basically an interference with the way the HIV mechanism sort of replicates. So again, it's not a cure for HIV, but it may slow its replication machinery, if you will, and that this is, really early stages here. We're talking about two things that aren't really right in the plant. They're things that are identified with letters and numbers and stuff like that.
Sure.
Nevertheless, this is by far the most promising thing we've seen in HIV work in quite some time. And it does offer a mechanism for folks like Bob Randall, who had HIV for decades and didn't even know it and never really had any symptoms. And for folks who are using cannabis while they suffer from HIV in order to enhance appetite and maintain weight gain and things like that, obviously there's a chance that this is also interfering with the way that HIV replicates.
When these researchers are studying this and using this synthetic THC and finding, results with HIV, are they doing so because they prefer that? They think it's going to be a better route, or just because they can't use natural THC?
It's much easier to get this JWH-133 than it is to get THC, as you can imagine. The synthetics are made in the lab, are less controlled, less paperwork, less struggle in order to deal with them, and so that's why they turn to these.
So when Sabet is trumpeting this, that it's a synthetic derivative, we really don't know if natural THC would be any good because we haven't had the chance to study it.
Well, and ironically, this is a more flagrant agonist of that CBT thing, where CB2 receptor, whereas because THC is a partial agonist, it may actually be more effective in certain ways. We just can't know. And that is what kind of saddens me is, wow, the natural cannabinoids, cannabidiol seems an obvious thing to try on this too. And the fact that work wasn't done before this work is kind of a shame.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at here, is that we're jumping right to the synthetic without even knowing if the natural one would have any effect, and it'd be nice to find out. When they make these synthetic cannabinoids, do they require natural THC to make them?
No, it's interesting. The guy who developed this JWH-133 is also the same guy who developed the ones that ended up in K2 and stuff like that. And so he was pretty upset that those ended up being consumed by humans. This was just something he developed in the lab because we thought, hey, this is definitely going to get right on CB2 and really work as a direct agonist. And the notion was to use something that we really understood better than the natural plants. But no, it's completely made out of synthetic stuff. It has nothing to do with the plant at all.
Okay. We have a question from Ty Stick. He'd like to know, have there been any studies toward the effect of CBD changing a person's mood or overall feeling of well-being?
So CBD alone The literature's been kind of weird. It may be dose dependent, so that maybe if it's too high, there's no effect, or not enough, there's no effect. But we don't see a ton of impact of CBD alone on mood directly. But in combination with THC, it tends to take that odd, spacey edge off the THC and create subjective effects that aren't quite the same.
All right. Vapor 1247 would like to know, what is the best temperature for vaporizing cannabis?
So allegedly 180 degrees centigrade, but I think the thing to do is to just see, am I getting any kind of smoke-like stuff in the inhalation, then I obviously should turn it down. If I am getting just a fine blue mist on my exhalation, then that's the target.
Okay. I'm not sure I understand this question, but I'll read it how it's written here, and perhaps they'll update me in the chat room. But KeyDebt46 says, I had spoken to Dr. Mitch about a shrinking prostate previously. Now I have something really baffling. The last time I had a PA test, it was 3.6. Now it was lower at 2.7. I guess from the context, he's saying that this number measurement must be a shrinkage of the prostate. And are we attributing this to cannabis use? I'm not sure exactly the frame here. Maybe you know this person's question.
Generally, that number going down is a sign that things are improving as far as basically one of these markers that might be an indicator of prostate cancer. I'm not a physician, so I don't want to talk about the raw values, but that is a step in the right direction. But unfortunately, that is not, as I understand it, at least a value that says, oh, you're safe.
Yeah.
So this is a complicated diagnosis and one that you can't just smoke a lot of pot and hope for the best on.
Yeah. All right. Dreamweaver has an excellent question, considering some of the headlines I've gone over recently. I often hear in the news that kids are sent to the ER for an edible overdose at school. So what do they do in the ER to treat them?
Alas, they get the same antiemetics. they get the same drugs they give people who swallow any other poison.
Oh,
so
no.
It's really sad. It's this, literally, you drink this paregoric type stuff and just barf for a long, long time. It's very unpleasant.
Ugh.
And the sad thing is they're already high, right? So
Yeah.
it makes the experience all the worse. And it's no guarantee that it's going to just end right there. It's already metabolized to some extent. So obviously we really need to mark our edibles in a way that they're less attractive to kids and definitely keep them out of the hands of kids.
Okay, so now Dr. Mitch gets to set the standard operating procedure at the ER. What should we do for the kids, even if it's our own kid that, gets a marijuana brownie and is a little tripping?
See, if there was any way we could know the dosage, I would say watch cartoons and have a Benadryl. But that's my own concern. We know there's no lethal dose unless unless they drank 13 grams of hash oil, right? It's really just not a likely thing that they're going to overdose. But unfortunately, getting it out of the system may be better than leaving it in. So we do have that chance. I feel like, again, prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah. Stereotype would like to know, what are your thoughts on DMT?
I'm a big fan of DMT, and I don't have a leg to stand on. There aren't a lot of data out there, but we don't see a lot of lethality. We do see the occasional DMT-induced accident. I would prefer, the ritual around ayahuasca, which is essentially the same chemical, but this is way out there compared to cannabis. This is a really active hallucinogen. It is a brief psychoactive period, but an extremely intense one. And what can I say? A lot of folks claim it really turns their lives around. I'm sure sooner or later we'll be hearing that it caused some psychosis and scared people and made them quit their jobs and want to play the drum all day.
Yeah, probably. All right. Well, Dr. Mitch Earlywine, thank you so much for joining us here. And folks, if you want to get your question answered through email, you're a little shy or something, you can go to our contact form, and we have got a drop down there for Dr. Mitch at 420radio.org/contact, or you can email directly at 420research@gmail.com. Thanks, Dr. Mitch, and we'll talk to you again soon.
See you soon.
When we come back, time for a radical rant. You might not like this one.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show.
Yeah, we've made a call on the controversial marijuana ballot question, Amendment 64. Floyd, we can safely say this is going to pass?